to another, truth can get confusing. There might be a lot of confusion, and we're seeking information always, but the reality is our information's right here, and that's where our intuition is. And the stories are just stories. To recognize what we tell ourselves, not just about others and their story, but what are we actually saying about why we need so much affirmation, so much clarity, in order to be right with ourselves. That might be the biggest question. So modeling relationships where repair is possible after rupture. Just really thinking about relationships and conflict. Sometimes I think fearful avoidants flip-flop and they may actually create conflict because they're so used to it. It feels familiar and passionate. Where has that appeared in their past? And what have they seen that love has to be? Some kind of push-pull situation. To recognize when they're feeling that way in their experiences, they need time to pause and look back at their stories in their head and really recognize that that's their responsibility to do. Not to completely separate themselves, but to give themselves time. I think time is a really big thing. The intuition is the quiet, steady signal beneath the emotional storm. That's really crucial because fearful avoidants are so addicted to that emotional storm. They're used to the emotional storm. They maybe even crave the emotional storm. They might seek people who will create that emotional storm within. They'll think that's good, when in reality, it's just familiar. And to recognize that quiet is where, and they don't have to be quiet completely separate, but they might need to have quiet with someone, really have that vulnerability in taking that space and listening within and feeling internally, dealing and having multiple sources to do FAM with, meaning having therapists, just a friend that's totally separate that you agree to do this with and has that emotional capacity to learn emotional regulation is really important. And again, the confidence coming out, the first 3 sessions that will be free in the beta test in January 2026 go through all these things that are going to just alter your perception of your ability to be in conflict with people. Amazing. I learned a lot about myself. So the first part of the confidence coming out course is consciousness awareness, right? And then the second is communication, your capacity to communicate to yourself. And you'll notice there's similarities to FAM here. And then the third one is care package, how you actually care for yourself. What do you do to soothe and regulate to get your nervous system down so that you can do the things you need to do with others? Instead of testing partners or oscillating between idolization and withdrawal, practice containerizing emotional waves. Like saying, I notice I'm spinning story. You're going to replace me. Can we slow down and reality check what's true right now? This is co-regulation. Not every partner you do this with is going to want to do this. You might be like, maybe not right now. I'm going to do this on my own for a little bit. I'm going to learn how to regulate myself so that I can come to this story. I would really like for you to make space for me in a few days so that we can do this together as well, because I think this is important. I want to be able to trust this relationship. These are the scripts we can work on in the communication sector of the Confidence Coming Out course, because sometimes we don't have the words, especially when we're not regulated. The practice is really important beforehand so that you have the familiarity in your system. Now we're going to go to anxious preoccupied. The lie of the anxious preoccupied is connection through compliance or people pleasing. The anxious preoccupied are the notorious codependent. The dismissive avoidant is the counter dependent type of personality or attachment style. The anxious preoccupied is like the specific codependent. They abandon their limits to avoid abandonment, which is kind of funny because they're abandoning themselves so that they won't be No, that doesn't work that way, but it's okay. They say, I'm fine while collapsing internally, believing approval equals safety, or giving, right? Putting people on the pedestal. And their RES filter, reticular activating system, filters for micro rejections. They're always looking for someone to leave them. They're like, when are you going to leave me? Every pause or delay feels like danger. Any silence is scary. And their intuition knows when something feels off. They're hyper aware, but their nervous system overrides it to chase reassurance. They're desperately looking for connection. And they're the counterpart to dismissive avoidant. Dismissive avoidant attracts anxious, preoccupied, and fearful avoidance, anxious side, and vice versa. They attract each other. The F is recalling experiences where love had to be earned. I totally understand that. When was someone expecting you to prove your worth? And it was just never enough. Recognize that that's what you're coming with and that you are self-abandoning when you do that. You're then expecting someone else to not abandon you, but you're the one abandoning you. It doesn't come off as honest because if you're abandoning your truth, no one knows who you are. I laugh because I do this, but the best thing really inevitably is F is the bias key, is start with your body, get present, self-regulate your emotions, learn how to connect with self. Connection is key. Be consistent with self. If you're confused, get clear with self. Start with you, because once you know what your needs look like, where your limits are, and what's non-negotiable to you, what do I absolutely need to be in this connection? In past recordings, we did a relationship assessment questionnaire. That was to assess, what do I absolutely need to be in this type of relationship? Or what type of relationship is this actually? For me, that's the agreement that we can get to once we know what we absolutely need. For the anxious, preoccupied, in the familiar shift, hear the internalized message: you're only safe when pleasing. Wow. No one's going to love you. You're going to be abandoned if you're not pleasing, if you have needs, if you have feelings, whatever. Oh, self-awareness is key. And knowing that you're telling yourself this over and over again is important, because that's what you're coming with. That's what other people are feeling. Your modeling is remodel relationships where saying no doesn't lead to punishment. So all of this is like speaking better of yourself. That's your ingrained belief reprogramming, which we do in the communication sector of the Confidence Coming Out course. The modeling is also part of the care package, where we start to know our needs, what it looks like to care for ourselves, and do it for us. First, we have to know what that is and what that looks like. And also to understand where that learned behavior came from. It was trying to protect us, right? Rebuilding intuition by checking in with our bodies. Does my yes feel open or tense? Is there a true yes? And if it's not a true yes, maybe it's a maybe. And what does that mean? What can I negotiate around? What can I not? And when there's no form of negotiation, when am I out? When do I feel really true about saying no in this moment? So in polyamory, instead of agreeing to every new relationship dynamic out of fear, they can use consent language. And this is the anxious preoccupied, right? So they might say, I want to support your connection, but my nervous system needs pacing. Can we create check-ins so I stay regulated? So it's like honoring your need for connection in a way that is more, it's interesting because this says my nervous system needs pacing. Before you even do this, learn how to regulate your nervous system in the first place. Anxious, preoccupied rely heavily on co-regulation. That can turn into the dependency on others to regulate your emotional state. Learning how to do that is key because you're going to have an empty cup with lots of holes in it. Even if you try to co-regulate with somebody, they're going to be like, oh my God, this is never ending because I fill your cup and it just goes everywhere. And then you're asking for more. That's something really important. And that's why codependency, that addiction to others fulfilling this need of connection is really there. Honesty transforms people pleasing into collaborative partnerships. However, if you're in relationship with people who aren't interested in collaboration, self-awareness, or communication, this might be hard. Being able to do the inner work is important so that you can stand, even though you have spoken for your needs, you might not be able to set your boundaries or limits. That is really important too. So the confidence course, the free version is the first 3 steps of the 7. The first 3 will prepare you for the 4th step, which is creating containers that really support your boundaries and limits and knowing what those are. We're going to be talking about a lot of steps of doing that. We already started with the relationship assessment questionnaire, which helps in finding what is within the container of a certain type of relationship for you, particularly. We're going to summarize the LIAR across the different insecure attachment styles. Now let's start with dismissive avoidant. Their core lie and self-abandonment phrase is, I don't need anyone. And their nervous system state is numb or dorsal vagal shutdown. Familiar return is to practice interdependence, understand what that means, and communicate needs. Coming to a course like this or any place that's going to teach you how to negotiate, how to understand what your needs are and how to be specific about them and hold space for others, considering yourself on a regular basis so that you consider others and come together in a collaborative space. Attachment style 2 is fearful avoidant, and their core lie or self-abandonment phrase is, love is chaos or dangerous and people will betray me. Nervous system state is flip-flop between fight, flight, or freeze or fawn. And familiar return is create emotional containers. It's really important for them to work on their boundaries and reality check their stories. The next one is anxious preoccupied, and their core lie or self-abandonment phrase is, if I make you happy, I'll be safe. A nervous system state is hyper-aroused or fawning. Familiar return is regulating yourself, setting boundaries, and affirming self-trust. And how do you do that? Is consistency with self, consideration of self, and continuously doing that and fulfilling your own needs that would be originally fulfilled, which is emotional regulation from others, connection from others. Thank you so much for joining me today. This was a long one. It's almost 40 something minutes. And I'm really tired. It's late today. I will see you next week talking about making agreements and what that might mean based on your attachment style. We might get into some scripts. You might be like, how is this related? This is a bit of the nitty-gritty of the Confidence Coming Out course. I will also be showing you my personal practice along the way that will give you an idea of what bias key looks like for me, which is the first consciousness. We already talked a little bit of attachment style, which I have a video on as well. You can go to the YouTube channel, Symbol Ray Life Coaching, go to the playlist called Confidence Coming Out course and search for the attachment style video. The second step of the Confidence Coming Out course is communication, and that we do the reprogramming. I'll also show a little bit of that from October 1st to November 19th. We'll do the first 3 steps of the Confidence Coming Out course. The third one is the care package, and this is really important. The last week I'll really focus on the care package because it's about your needs, how to fulfill them and how to express them, and that's really important. The last 4 weeks of this 7-week thing that I'm doing every day, I will be doing the last 4 steps of the Confidence Coming Out course, which is containerize, consistency, your calling, and creativity are the 4. Thank you so much for joining me, and we'll see you tomorrow. We're going to be working on agreements and how to communicate and come together. Have a great day. Bye.